Hey, what's up, y'all, man? See if a few of y'all get in here. I've been wanting to get this off my chest really since yesterday. So hopefully I get a few of y'all in here. I ain't gonna keep it waiting too long. You can catch it on the replay as well. But hopefully get a few people in here. But I really want to talk about this. I know people talking about it. Just want to give y'all my 3 cents on it. Especially when I just see a lot of different stances out there. Not knocking nobody else's stance, but I definitely want to make sure that we are, to a certain extent, that some of us are coming to understand how this political game is played. Obviously, we're in a political season with the general election 2020. You know, for those who've heard me talk about politics in the past, you know, we talk about politics as more local than national, if you will, and that's, well, it takes a little work. You know what I mean? I've been making some relationships here, you know, in my area down here in the ATL, and you know, and trying to understand local politics more. That takes a little more effort than the national politics was right in our face. But anyway, not to keep y'all waiting, but I want to say this about Ice Cube. Personally, straight up, I think it's been masterful chess moves for Ice Cube to play his position the way he's played his position. But I think, and I haven't followed all of the response via social media. I don't watch any TV. But you know, that being on social media promoting mental dialogue, I definitely kind of got wind by just some of the people I follow either being happy or unhappy with what Ice Cube has done, or what we found out, I guess, that the Trump administration reached out to him after he laid out a black agenda. Well, the reason I say masterful is because one of the bones that I've always had, in a sense, from doing the radio show, we don't touch politics a lot, but one of the biggest bones I've had from a collective standpoint is the idea that we rarely ever have, generally speaking, presented a black agenda saying what it is that we want. Politics is always about the ask. What is it that we want? And so Ice Cube, I remember when he first kind of came out with his black agenda, if you will. You know, one of my members was like, you know, this is like a publicity stunt, don't need this at this time. That was the perspective. And I actually followed and watched how much effort Ice Cube put into putting it together. And I was like, this seemed like more than a publicity stunt. And now we found out that he had presented it to the Democrats and the Republicans, if you will, to say, hey, here's the black agenda, presented it, but we just found that out. And the reason I say masterful and smart is because prior to this moment, we've been saying to candidates, what is your black agenda? We've been asking other people to tell us what the hell is their agenda for us. And if you remember earlier in the year, Joe Biden, when asked that question, he kept sidestepping the hell out of even presenting one, and finally came to the table with one once he realized there was no winning for him without at least floating something out there. And so they finally rushed up a black agenda website. But this is, keep in mind, this is after he did his black media run. So if it was sincere, one, it should have been prior to the black media run. So that could have been the gist of his talk when he was on his black media run. But it came as a result, you know, of that. And then a few weeks ago, I saw my Republican friends here in Atlanta when Trump came here jumping for joy at the quote unquote platinum plan, if you will, for Trump. But if you understand what I'm saying is, we were asking these candidates for their agenda for us versus a black agenda should be us presenting it two candidates and saying, what on this agenda would you meet? Would you meet most of these demands or some of these demands? And that's where the negotiation begins. So when I found out that not only had Q cooked up this black agenda, which I thought was relatively thorough considering he spent the time doing this himself during the quarantine, if you will, but that he had done the right thing, which is presented to both sides. Now we're finding out that the Trump administration reached out and maybe even implemented some of his stuff in the platinum plan, if you will. And I'm seeing people saying, don't Q know that Trump is just playing or whatever. And I'm sitting here going, do you not understand how politics work? Every group is vying for their personal interests. And so you present it, and when you present it, you present it to all of the candidates to see who's gonna meet it. Now, of course, when they say, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that, it's not that you think, especially with politicians, that you necessarily believe that's what they're gonna do. But if they whoever makes the most promises to you, once they're in office, you use that conversation, that negotiation to figure out how much of the agenda did they meet. So the concept that I saw somebody saying, you know, does Q think Trump's really gonna do it? I was like, hell no, Q doesn't think. He doesn't believe if either side said they're gonna do it. Now, unfortunately, here's the sad part, and I thought this was a very smart tweet by Ice Cube. But unfortunately, the Democrats said we'll wait till after the election. What? And so, playing a political game, Q deciding to jump in, you know, in this situation, it was very smart for him to send out that tweet to say, Democrats, you keep proving that you're not gonna do anything for us, and there's no more proof in the pudding, and that we're gonna wait till after the election to even talk to you. Just Q, go away for a second. Go away, Q. Go away and let us handle this. It's showing you exactly how they're gonna handle it. That's how they've handled us for 40 years. So him sending out that tweet is proof of the whole point. Now, if you've followed me long enough, or when I even do political talks, it is absolutely imperative that the African American community seriously consider becoming independents. And I've been saying this for years. A lot of you got other videos saying this. Again, not trying to do a whole bunch of political talks, but when I do, independence meaning we stand in the middle, and we're willing to switch sides as necessary to hold politicians accountable, or even vote third party when there's a viable third party option. That's what independence means. Meaning I vote both sides of the aisle, and independent whenever possible, third party whenever possible. And so people always shoot that down, not understanding that politics is a long play. It is always a long play. The very people that you were talking to and buying for, you know, whatever we're asking for, if we're even asking. A lot of times I don't feel like we're even asking. But the people that you're buying to, they're playing the long game at all times. So this is what the long game includes. Some people would say, well, not right now with this certain president should we be talking about these things or risking, you know, votes going to one side or the other. The reality is, when you play politics and understand that it's a long game, there's no better time than to start pushing third party at a time when the country's most fed up with the two parties. You start that propaganda and that messaging now, because it's going to be years down the line before you grab enough people to, for example, a lot of people don't know this, but if a third party ever was to get 5% of it, if any third party candidate was to get 5% of the voting during a general election, that third party would have to be invited to the next general elections, all debates, to the table. And I want to make sure people understand that. And that's the long-term game. Because what happens is, nobody that's voting third party is voting third party because they expected to have influence today or for this election. It is a chance for the people to make a stance, and the super long term play is to get one of these parties to 5%, because if you get one of these third parties to the 5%, it'll be much easier to get your agenda in the hands of that party now that they are going to be allowed to come to the debate. Because if they got 5%, they have to be brought to the debate. Currently, and both parties love it this way, currently, without a third party getting that percentage, they can do things and manipulate it, and they just never allow hardly, I think we saw Ross Perot in our lifetime, the big that had enough money, he got to a debate in the past. But there's been times where third parties were making noise, and I think Carter did it, just refused to debate the third party. And you can get away with that if they don't ever get enough percentages in one election. So I'm breaking this down because that's what I see masterful about Q going on this campaign. Not only did he present it, but he went on media outlets to break it down and go on this campaign. That's long-term thinking, to say, hey, here's the thought process. Neither side has really catered to our community. And so now for us to understand it's time to demand something for our vote, the best time to do it is right now, when the country is at strife and not happy with either party. You strike thinking long term when people are most upset. Whereas obviously if you're locked in on one side, you're gonna run the fear propaganda of, oh, why would you do it right now? Anytime but now. No, this is the perfect time to strike strategically with a different train of thought of our community actually coming to understand, let's get something for our vote, versus just simply showing up and hitting a lever every 4 years. At 13% of the country's population, we can influence close elections. So perfect timing by Ice Cube. Do it right now, where people are fed up with the status quo. Start these conversations now. And no, it's not about whether either side will do what's on Q's agenda. You present the agenda, let them make their promises, and if it's a 2-year term or a 4-year term, you hold them accountable at that point. So no, it's not about, like we gotta kill the concept. This has aggravated me for the last 4 years. We gotta kill the concept of not even being at the table. I'm talking about for those that are gonna play politics. I understand there's plenty of people say build your own table, or you're not involved in politics. Okay, if that's your position, then I'm not talking to that. I'm talking about that. But I'm talking about if you understand how politics decides a lot of things locally more so than nationally, if you will. If you understand the need for it and you are deciding to vote, then understand the concept over the last 5 years of not even sitting down with one side has never made sense to me from this standpoint. If in this situation, within the current administration, there's this concept that this administration is completely against the African American community. Even if that's true, do you want them to make every decision without anybody in the room? Like, politics is completely about negotiations. There is no president that should come along that we're not willing to, one, get in the room. And the other thing is, I never assume that whether it's an Ice Cube or whomever, I'm not assuming that they're at a disadvantage. Like, I think we assume that Trump somehow was at an advantage in every situation. Or if we don't assume that, we really think the negotiation should happen from a zero-sum standpoint. In other words, we get what we want and they get nothing of what they want. That's not politics. Like I saw somebody mention, you know, somebody, the Cube's being used as a celebrity pawn. Or I've seen when other people went and visited saying, you know, Trump got a photo op out of it. Yeah, you probably got to give up something to get what you want. Like that's the game of politics. It's not zero sums. I get everything I want and you get nothing you want. So, and again, it's not about whether I'm agreeing with what somebody went for or to meet, but the concept of not sitting down at all has been played and overused, and we've never really been at a point like this politically where that's been the play. I've always been against that play, and so again, smart tweet by Cube, in my opinion, to tweet out one side said wait decision to say, hey, here's an. I got knocked off for a second, y'all. Looks like I'm back live. But that was pretty much everything I wanted to say. Is ultimately brilliant move, created the agenda, presented to both sides. It's not about whether either side's telling you the truth. These are politicians. Like, they need to meet some of those demands, but you're not going to know that prior to the actual election, and that's just proof in what's already happened. There's been a lot, you know. Neither party has a good track record, in my opinion, you know, collectively for the community. But again, people have different opinions. That's fine. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, I always tell people, you know, my rule that I do not lose friends over politics and religion, because I never understand somebody's personal interest, which is what politics is always about, for why they might be voting the way they do. And so I don't let it bother me. And, you know, and I would encourage, you know, let's not lose friends over politics when, again, people's personal interests may not be your own. And I think sometimes our community gets caught up in other people's narratives that are not ours and run with it and start judging whether others should run with it. And again, you just never know anybody's personal reason, or you let one side tell you how dumb you are for not seeing their reason or something to that effect. And it may not have nothing to do with what's most important to you. So I don't trip on, I don't even care to know who an individual is voting for, you know, in that sense. Just because, again, I just respect that people's personal interests may not be mine. You know, at the end of the day, I always let people know, one of the biggest issues that I'm concerned with collectively is mass incarceration. And both of these parties have presented me law and order presidents that are nothing that I'm a fan of. That's just keeping it a buck. So, as an independent, often third-party voter, I'm still leaning that way, you know. And I'm saying that, you know, even with the president's unwillingness to denounce, you know, white supremacy on a national platform, because ultimately, when it comes to systematic racism, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really see these presidents as much different. Like, you know, that's just keeping it a buck. And again, I think it's the system stuff that concerns me, because it affects more the individual stuff. I'm gonna navigate that, and as I always say, I'm fortunate enough to live in Atlanta and not even have to worry myself with it as much, and as I've recommended in other situations. Recommend you live near your people. We're gonna avoid, you know, it helps safeguard us against some of the stuff we see out here. The reality is, I always throw this idea out there, and I'm gonna get off this thing. Just keep in mind that if we could consider aggregating back towards one another, we could definitely help insulate ourselves from certain things that we're frustrated about. But that's a whole other video, so I'm not gonna do that. But I'm just throwing it out there that ultimately, I love the move by Ice Cube. I got cut off, so I'll say it. I think some people just jumped on, so I'll say this as a quick summary, just to make sure y'all don't miss out on what was said previously. I love the move by Ice Cube simply because it's us presenting an agenda. We have to present it to both sides to show that even if it's the Democrats that you think you're going to get the most from, you have to present it to both sides to show that you are serious and not BSing. Presenting it to one side and hoping that they're going to come through for you, they don't have to take you serious because you haven't shown that you're willing to go elsewhere to get it. So that's why you present it to both sides and take those calls. So masterful job by Ice Cube, masterful job by calling out what actually happened when he presented it to both sides, because if at the end of the day, if we want to ask and get something for our vote, you have to call out when both sides on what they actually did. And in this situation, the Democrats said, wait till after the elections. Trump reached out beforehand, and we are ridiculing him because the president reached out. No, if I present an agenda, I don't give a damn which side wants to talk. We're going to talk to both sides, and we're going to figure out who want to talk and who want to deliver. If one tell me to wait till after the election, I know they're not serious. And even if it's a political move to act like you care by this side, I'm still finna have the negotiations, because at the end of the day, I want some of this shit. And in wanting it, if you say you're gonna give it to me, then I got a record to hold you against and hold you accountable and vote you out next time if you don't hold it. If you do, then I give you props, and hey, there it is. So again, I love what Ice Cube's doing. It's time for us to learn to ask for something, put the agenda. Brother went on a serious campaign. He ain't doing it for publicity as far as I can tell, just the fact that he went on a media campaign. So that's just a summary for the people that got in late. With that said, I'm out. Tomorrow night, if you're not doing anything, 8 p.m., we got the Mental Dialogue Community Connections via Zoom. And Saturday, if you're in Atlanta, we're going to go out and support 13-year-old entrepreneur Mason Wright as he opens up Mason's Super Hot Dogs. Got beef and vegan hot dogs. The brothers opening up. We've had a mobile hot dog stand for the last few years, and now at 13 years old, he's becoming the youngest restaurant owner in Georgia. As his grand opening is happening Saturday. We're going to have him on the air at 10 o'clock on the blog, on the Mental Dialogue Talk Show at 10 o'clock, and right after that, he's going to open up his restaurant, and we're going out there from 1 to 3 to bomb rush and show their kids some love. So if you're in Atlanta, join us for that. That's my 3 cents on Ice Cube. I salute that king for moving with his own mind and not being driven by the political narratives by either side to speak his truth. And in my opinion, show us how to get back to moving and knowing we got to negotiate if you're gonna play politics. And for those that don't, I mean, politics rules a lot, whether you realize it or not. But I will say that if you getting by or surviving, a lot of that don't concern you in your real life, and I get it. So if you can't point to a political policy that directly affects you, it's probably because you're just not familiar with the ones that do. And I'm not knocking anybody for that. That's quite understandable. Brother Jay Bailey said something very profound years ago that I hold on to. And he said, if you are in a situation where you're asset poor, it's unrealistic to expect people in that condition to really understand the intricacies of politics, because politics is really ruled by the business class. And so if that's not your position, while your one vote is important, but to be told and hounded and told that the vote is so important, and it's not that it's not, but for the powers that be, if you will, to act like the majority of the public should be more informed, it's kind of BS. Like I always let people know, even in this election, 35 to 40% of the country is still not going to vote. So that's a reality. We only 13% of this country, so I never let anybody try to tell me that it's more important for us when the reality is a big portion of the country doesn't get involved. I'm not saying it makes it okay not to get involved, but to be held to this standard. And the standard is typically only if you vote one way. If That's the problem. And that's how we've gotten in this position of being political pawns. I'm tired of being political pawns. Let's get independent. Let's go independent. Let's start that. Let's get there. And over the next 8 years, if more of us are independent, then they're gonna start having to come to the table with something to earn the vote versus assuming that either we won't vote for one side or they think our vote is in the bag and all it is about turnout. That's not the position we want to stay in. So, salute, Ice Cube. I'm out. It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. All I ask is that you think.